Hello, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Welcome to Club Book with Oyinkan Braithwaite. My name is Muvanga. I am a writer from Zambia based in Minnesota. Before I introduce today's guest properly, allow me a moment to tell you a little bit more about the unique series that is bringing her to us. So, Club Book is a program of MELSA, the Metropolitan Library Service Agency, made possible through Minnesota's Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and coordinated by Library Strategies, part of the Friends of St. Paul Public Library. Carver County Library is the co-organizer of today's talk. Thanks also to partnering bookseller Red Balloon Bookshop. A purchase link to Cursed Daughters, the book we'll be discussing today, will be available in the comment section of the live stream feed. You can have it shipped, pick it up, or visit their lovely bookstore in St. Paul. You can have them delivered to you personally at your door if you live close to where Red Balloon Books is. One final housekeeping notes. Also in the comments, you'll see a survey link. So Melsa would greatly appreciate hearing what you think of this club book program. It's quick and easy. Our guest tonight is Nigerian-British novelist Oyinkan Braithwaite, who burst onto the literary scene in 2018 with her propulsive debut thriller, My Sister the Serial Killer. Ayoola, the book's title character, is beautiful and charming, but impulsive and ruthless, as evidenced by a string of murdered boyfriends. Dutiful older sibling Korede is an expert at cleaning up Ayoola's messes, and until both set their sights on the same handsome young doctor. In a starred review, Publishers Weekly called My Sister the Serial Killer bitingly funny and brilliantly executed with not a single word out of place. It garnered Braithwaite the 2019 Anthony Award for Best First Novel and a coveted spot on Time's 100 Best Mystery and Thriller Books of All Time, among other high honors. It has since been translated into more than 30 languages. Braithwaite's highly anticipated follow-up, family saga Cursed Daughters, hits shelves November 4th, so today. Seemingly fated for tragedy from birth, Annie is encumbered by both a family curse and a widely held belief that she is the reincarnation of her dead cousin. We'll have time for audience Q&A. Simply drop your questions in the comments thread here on Facebook, and our tech manager will route them to me. You can also send a message to Club Book through Facebook Messenger or email, where we are at clubbookmn@gmail.com. Welcome, Oyinka, and thanks for agreeing to chat with me today.
Yeah, I'm excited. Good evening. Well, this evening, I don't know
Yeah.
what time, the evening where I am. So good evening, everyone.
Yeah. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. It's noon in Minnesota. I'm in New York, so it's 1 p.m., so same time of the day. I really enjoyed reading this. Oh, no one can see it, but I really enjoyed reading Cursed Daughters just as much as I enjoyed. Honestly, I went through it just as quickly as I did My Sister the Serial Killer, which I read years ago. And I told you has been a subject of discussion between my best friend and I ever since. So let me start you from the beginning. I know you're not reading today, but at the beginning of the book, at least the version that I have, there's a Dear Reader section that's authored by you directly to the readers. Does that make it into the final version?
No, no, that was just, yeah, it was the proof copy. Yeah,
Okay. All right. I mean, I'll still ask you a question from there.
yeah,
So I'll
that's fine.
read it. So in there, there's a section where you say, this book is about generational trauma, about myth and superstition, and also about love. And Cursed Daughters is a very different book from My Sister, the Serial Killer, not just because of the content, but because it feels like I am a completely different person from the one who wrote my first novel. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, mostly time. Time has, I wrote My Sister's Circle in 2017. And it's now 2025. So time. And and also my life has changed so much since then, apart from the fact that I finally was able to achieve my this desire I had had since I was very young of having holding a published book in my hands. I had also, I was in my 20s at that time, and I was living with my parents, and I had very little responsibilities outside of, what just trying to accomplish my goals and work and all of that. But at the time I was writing Kurt's Daughters, I was married, I was pregnant, I was dealing with hyperemesis gravidarum, which I think I mentioned. And if you don't know what it is, it's when you're throwing up like a pig, just throwing up from dusk till dawn. My dad was staying with my husband and I during that period, and he was dealing with a health diagnosis. So it was just um adulting to the max kind of at that stage. And that's the space I was in when I started writing Cursed Daughters. So it definitely and also I was now the author of My Sister the Serial Killer, and I had whatever expectations I imagined readers might have, or also at the back of my mind. So I definitely was not the individual who had been in her room just doing the thing that she loved to do.
Mhm. I was thinking about expectations when I was reading it. I was wondering if you wanted to make that distinction so that people going in reading the book were expecting something completely different.
I'll tell you something about that actually. I did right at the start of, because the UK Cup book has been out for like 6 weeks or so now. But right at the start of that journey, I went to speak at a booksellers conference.
Mhm.
And afterwards, and I was with someone from the UK publishing house. They were with me. So after I had had my little pitch, um, I was talking to a couple of booksellers, and he kept hearing me say, "It's not like my sister, the serial killer.
Yeah.
It's not like my sister, the serial killer." And at some point, he was like, "Stop doing that."
Yeah.
Um, but I really felt as though if I didn't let people know,
Hmm.
they might, the reader might go in expecting my sister, the serial killer, energy and vibes, and then be disappointed. And not because this book wasn't good, but because their expectations,
Hmm.
they weren't expecting what they got, and they might have a visceral reaction to like, why is this a slower, it's a slower
Hmm.
paced novel. It's I think it's a little bit more complex in some ways.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also had a lot of feedback. So I know there's some people have told me, oh, they were going through a reading slump, and My Sister Circular was it was an easy read. It helped them out of it. And I'm like, hey, you might like this, but it's not as easily digestible. I don't think it's a hard book, but to
Hmm.
read. But if you're someone who's like, oh, My Sister Circular was really light, and I
Hmm.
love that it was a quick read. That's not this. So yeah, but he was not, he was like, look, if you're gonna say that, sell it.
Yeah.
It's like it's good, different.
It
Don't,
is. It
yeah.
is. It is. It's good. It's good, different. I mean, I wasn't, maybe because I'm a writer too,
Mm,
like I wasn't going and reading the book thinking, I wonder if it's going to be like the same book.
mm, mm,
And so my first question started there because I was like, huh, I've never thought about differentiating one piece of work from another. And just hearing your response, it sounds like it was a good decision not to include that on like the first page of the book because then it calls attention to itself.
yes,
Even
yes,
if
yes.
you weren't, yeah, even if you
Yeah.
weren't thinking about, the other book, now you are, right?
Mm,
You're right that it's different. Just for me, it's different mainly in pacing, right? I think like that's like the
mm,
big difference between the two. But obviously, there are other differences. It's a
mm,
completely different
mm,
premise. The structure is different. This one's multi-generational. But even in that difference, one question that I've been thinking about for years, someone once asked me, I had written something and someone asked me, did I feel like I had said everything that I wanted to say about that topic? And I
Mm,
kind of revisit that question in different ways. And the way that I've been thinking about it recently is I think that writers all have an individual haunting. And each time that they write, they are facing that haunting at a new phase in their life. So obviously, like you were saying, when you were writing the first book, you were a completely different person. You had a different
mm,
space in your life.
mhm.
So even if you did write My Sister the Serial Killer now, it would be different, don't
It
you
would
think?
be very different, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so bringing it to this book, Cursed Daughters, which all the different sections speak to sisterhood, some kind of sisterhood, whether it's in friendship or familial. What I was seeing, the thread that I was seeing is sisterhood. Do you think sisterhood is your haunting?
I hope not.
Mm.
But it's actually funny because I feel as if, I it was very important to me to get as far away from my sister's serial killer as I could. And
Hmm.
then this book has come out and people are like, "Oh, you're interested in family and you're interested
Hmm.
in sisterhood and you're interested in," and I'm like, "Hey, looks as if I didn't get as far away from it as I thought."
You
So if
did.
you're right and there is because it's to me, obviously I don't think about most of the time. Sometimes I might have one or two things I'm thinking about at the start of writing the story, but a lot of the other themes that come up in my writing
Mhm.
come up in the course of my writing. And
Mhm.
I believe that you don't have to be like, I need to talk about this and this
Of
because
course, yeah.
your subcon in your sub you the things that you care about, they're inside you,
Hmm.
and they will come out, I think, organically
Yeah.
anyway, and it happens with me a lot. So if you asked me, if you just bumped into me on a random Monday and you said, is family
Mm.
something you're particularly interested in, I would have said no.
Mm-hmm.
But I've now written about it twice, at least in these two novels. So clearly I have some interest in it.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, womanhood, I think, is somewhat thing I can probably say, yes, I'm interested in women. I'm absolutely interested in women and the plights of women and um the flaws of women. Like I'm interested in that, and I think that's going to keep coming up over and over again. But yeah, sisterhood, I wouldn't have said was something that I was particularly interested in if you had asked me outside
Hmm.
of these novels.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was also different to the extent that in this one you're peeling away some of the layers, like showing us a bit more of what how how the sisterhood that we see in the book came to be, right?
Mm.
Especially because we travel across time so much and in places move back and forth. What changed for you from the beginning to the end? Because I'm taking this from your response just now that referenced this idea that there are things that we are interested in and are ultimately going to write about, maybe not decisively, maybe not starting out with these little notes, but they show up anyway. When you started Cursed Daughters, what did you think it was going to be about?
Goodness. I knew it was going to be about reincarnation. I knew that. I knew
Mm.
reincarnation was going to be there because that's where I started from. That was my point of interest in
Mhm.
the story.
Mhm.
The curse came a little, still obviously quite early, but it came a little bit later on in the
Mhm.
story as I was sort of fleshing out the family and why they were convinced this girl is a reincarnation, and who did she reincarnate from, and what happened to this girl she reincarnated from, and all of that, and it developed from there. But my process is very much I think in my mind, I kind of think like writing is like magic, because we're all given the same dictionary. We all have this access to the same vocabulary, and yet how we combine the words and how we place one here and one there, we end up with very different results.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like this alchemy that I can't fully put my finger on because there are things that happen in the course of writing where I'm like, okay, this isn't working, and then something else will click, and it's just very much this journey of discovery that I go on. So most of it I discovered as the majority of it I discovered as I went,
Mhm.
I'd realize, okay, I just realized at some point I didn't tell Kemi, for example, that she has four husbands. At some point, as I was writing her tale, I'm like, okay, then this relationship ended and she married this person, and actually, so a lot of it, and then I think I try to be true to just life and relationship. And it was going into it, I think it's really important for me that these women love each other, but that their love could burn as
Mhm.
well as heal. Their love could be loving, but but also harmful.
Mhm.
Um, and then discovering the ways that that would be. Most of it, I
Mhm.
I just discover as I go.
Mhm. I really like this explanation you give, which is true, of having access to the same alphabet and the
Mm,
same set of words and them showing up differently in the text. And so much of that, I believe, is informed by our experiences. When you mentioned at the beginning being pregnant and navigating certain health challenges while you were also writing the book, I immediately thought of the scene where a character discovers that she's pregnant and she's throwing up before she kind of like accepts that she's pregnant, right? Like
mm,
without giving
mm,
anything away.
mm,
And
mm,
she's throwing up, and somebody else comes into the room shortly after. And I remembered when I was reading that, thinking this section of the text was written by someone who's been pregnant
mm.
before and has experienced
Interesting.
this. Yeah, because when I write those scenes, so there's certain, I don't think you're doing it like deliberately, but like
Yes, yeah.
when you get to, like a labor and delivery scene, your brain takes you back, like, oh, what was it like for me? So yeah, I remember thinking that as I was reading it. And I didn't know at the time that you had had a child or that you were pregnant when you were writing it. But when you said it just now, I said, oh, yeah, I remember thinking that. Your
Mm,
response also transitions nicely into some of the questions that were pulled before we started the conversation. So some people were asking whether the dynamics that you've created for the characters. First of all, I wanted to say the love was very palpable. It was very believable, even in the ways that it could be harmful throughout
mm,
the book, but also how it was healing in places, right? I found that really believable. Even though I don't have sisters, I myself am very fascinated with sisters. I'm very aware
mm,
of my fascination with sisters, which is perhaps why I was drawn to both
mm.
books. But the question is, are the dynamics you've created for the characters based on any real life relationships? Do you have siblings or do you have sisters in your life, whether those sisters are whether you're related to those sisters or not? And also more generally, how do you ensure that these characters feel true to life, which these characters did for me?
Um, I think maybe for this book, what I drew from, I do have siblings, but I think what I drew from mostly was just generally the women, um, just being I'm surrounded by really sort of strong, confident women. I know strong has a bad rap these days, but um, you know, women who are um like I don't even know what to like steamrollers, like they just power through, and and they love big, and they are pushy, and they are invasive, and they are rude, and they're in your space a lot. And I think so when I think about characters, I'm never thinking about this particular individual or that particular individual, because that makes it very hard to do certain things to them. I feel like if so, for example, I based a character on my sister, I would be unable to kill that character off,
Mhm.
or do whatever to that character. So I actually steer away from basing it on a particular, but there's loads of little things I've witnessed as a woman surrounded by all these like women who are doing some funny things or some cool things or whatever. There's a scene in this novel that is very close to I think, I hope, see, I've already forgotten what I've written in this book,
Don't
but
worry,
if
I
I
have it.
remember the book correctly, it's
Yeah.
a scene when this might be too much information, but it's a scene where one of the characters starts her period for the first time.
Mhm.
And that was a little bit similar to my experience, and it was with this, this scene is between cousins, but in my experience was between my auntie and I. It was my aunt that I was like, hey, um I don't know what's going on. So, I could like moments like that, sometimes I could capture or things you just heard about, but I think I've had good as far as like women who are really bold and independent. I have a lot of examples to draw from.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at my notes here, and one of the places that really stuck out to me, in addition to the scene I was talking about earlier, where the character finds out they're pregnant, I too am trying not to give too much away. So I'm trying to figure out like what can I give without like
Mm.
really spoiling it for people. But there's a scene somewhere in the middle that's describing, not even the middle, towards the beginning of the book, that's describing a state of postpartum depression, is how I read it. Um, and yeah, that also felt the same kind of recognizable, even without having experienced that myself. But it felt the same kind of recognizable as the pregnancy discovery scene, as also the first period scene.
I think,
Um,
do you know what?
mhm,
I didn't write that scene to be, at least I didn't write it to be a a postpartum depression sort
mhm,
of. However, I was just saying when you said it, I thought this is interesting because even though, to be honest, like my experience again, because I had hyperemesis gravidarum, the hardest part for me was being pregnant. And I think I mentally um I was I went a little bit cuckoo, but I think the thing about being, especially in this sort of scenarios that this character the sort of situation this character found herself in and the environment and everything that had gone on just days before, or maybe a month before, weeks before. Um, but truth is, like when you're being a new mother, which is what I was thinking when you said it's hard, it's tough. Like even, there's probably a very thin line between not being depressed and being depressed post because even when you're, well, I've not experienced PPD, so I can't really speak to that, but it's your body, like you're still healing. At least in my case, like your body is still trying to get itself together. You've got this new life that depends on you, and in this scenario, this character was still grieving, was dealing with it a well, not alone, but also sort of alone. And there was a lot going on. So maybe she was, and I just didn't know it. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think so much of it has to do so much of it has to do with who you have around you,
Yeah.
how
Hmm.
much how much actual help you have around you.
Support system is vital. Like
Yeah.
I've learned, I even as in this journey of touring for this book,
Hmm.
right now I'm in Germany and my toddler is with me and my sister is with me, because I just wouldn't otherwise. And then the next, when I come to the States, she'll be with her dad and he'll be good for that period. I couldn't do this without the support system that I had. And
Yeah.
you're right, without a strong, like, and I do think that's also what can tip a woman
To the other
over
side.
to
Yeah.
that other
Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
because, without a partner that's,
Hmm.
that's willing to be like, I'll take this child from you without
Hmm.
your mother showing up, or, if you've lost your mother, you don't have this. So, like, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I often think that when I had my children, I was in Zambia, and I think when I reflect back on that time, I think the ease that I remember had so much to do with the access to help that I had, right?
Mhm.
Family and friends just being close by. If
Mhm.
I felt like I was in a crisis, I could call. And I think that's so different when you move away from your family, as you know.
Yeah.
But with those challenges, I mean, I want to be making sure that I'm pulling also from the questions that other people had outside of myself, so I'm not selfish. I think this connects well with the idea of like what is easy and what is difficult, right? So there's a question in there about comparing your publishing experiences in this book where, obviously your name is better known and, like people already know who you are by the time you're publishing the book. But now you've given us like a bit more context. So like we can add to that question. So the question itself was related to the difference in publishing your first book versus publishing this one, and whether you think it has been easier, whatever easier feels
Hmm.
like to you, but contextualizing that within, all this backstory that you've given us just now.
I mean, so the thing about my sister, put yourself in my shoes. I've been writing all my life. I've wanted to be a published author all my life. And then at some point, and I even remember like starting to panic. I was 29, thinking,
29. 29, you were a
I
baby.
was 20. Hey, I've been 29 for me. I had been doing it for 19
I see
years.
what you mean.
I
Yeah.
was, I had been doing it
Yeah.
a long time. And I was like, why did God give me this gift if he's not, like what? Even though I was making these bold statements, I hadn't queried anybody. I wasn't even doing I would send my work out to competitions and sometimes rank or whatever, but I hadn't even, I don't know what I thought was gonna happen, whether, the agent would just come into my bedroom and be
I
like,
mean, they might, you don't know.
you don't know. But anyway, long story short, I eventually did get published. So
Mhm.
a lifetime up to that point of
Yeah.
desiring this thing, and
Hmm.
finally it's tangible.
Hmm.
I felt so much joy. I was in a state of just, you know, if you see, I was probably high like throughout that time. Everything that was happening was fantastic, wonderful. Like I didn't question anything. I didn't, and when I say I didn't question anything, I was still myself. I still had my values, and I still had, you know, once in a while I would fight for myself. But for the most part, I was just along for the ride, and I was grateful and I was thankful, and that was the space that I was in.
Hmm.
Um, and I was also learning how to be, because I'm quite outside of book stuff, I'm just in my house. I don't go anywhere. So being front facing in the way that I was having to adapt quickly and learn quickly. So that was that. And obviously my sister's circle, it did well. So a lot of it was, I wasn't worried about anything really as far as that. Now for this book, time has passed. I'm older. I've got a child. I have nursery fees to pay. We've got, I've got bill,
Big
it's a
girl
different,
concern.
yeah, it's a different, I'm invested in the success of this book in a way that I wasn't even with my sister's circular. I'm also more confident. So
Hmm.
I fight for things that I want more. I'm more intentional. I don't shy away from opportunities that present themselves. So it's I'm working harder for this book. So and it's I can't even really tell um how different the experience is.
Oh, I
Like
lost. a little bit
Question.
there. I had lost you just for
Sorry.
a
Oh,
beat.
back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The last thing I heard you talk about was being more invested in this book, and then you transitioned into something else. Could you just repeat that, please?
Yeah, so yeah, I was just saying I'm working harder for this book. And and I'm more observant. I'm asking more questions like what does
Yep.
it mean if this and what does it mean if that? And okay, how can I've put myself in the process a lot more than I did.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and I'm also a little bit more prepared to deal with people not liking the book than I was with my sister's serial killer because some people hated it and or didn't think it was it deserved the hype it got. And I think I'm in a better place
To deal with.
mentally to deal with all of that. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Are you, when you say, because at the beginning you mentioned too, like you got some feedback. I think you were talking about at your booksellers event a few weeks ago. And now you've mentioned feedback again. Do you engage with your feedback after the book has been published? Like, how do you know that some people, I mean, surely some people hated it because you know that nothing is beloved by everybody. But were
Mhm.
you engaging with the feedback? Like, were you reading it?
Um, People like to tag you.
Yes,
People like to
yes.
tag you
I've been
when
tagged
they hate.
before.
Yeah, when they hate.
Yeah,
I don't, for the life of me, I can never understand it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
People like to tag you. So, and I think also, again, just the experience, you want to see what people say sometimes.
Mhm.
So you go to see what people say, and then you see someone just absolutely shredding the work.
Yeah. I don't know why I
So
asked you that.
that happens, but most of the time I stay away generally.
Yeah, wise.
Yeah, most of the time I stay away. But yeah, when people tag you, you don't know, you're like, oh, I've been tagged, and you go there and like, oh
Yes.
gosh.
Yeah. I mean,
But I never responded
good.
to anything. Generally. If
Yeah.
people say something kind, then I try to remember to thank them.
Yeah.
And if they say something mean, I just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I forgot this experience, but yeah, that's how I found my negative feedback was someone tagged me. It was first thing in the morning too, just scrolling lazily.
Yeah.
Someone was tagging. There was a list too, like a really long list. Like I didn't really need
The weird thing is that we're human beings.
that.
It's like you can hate something. Everybody, we all have the right. I don't like everything I
Yeah.
read. That's part of the journey. You don't have to like it, but whoever it was spent a huge amount of time, putting pen to paper, trying to figure this out. Their heart is in it, and then you want to come and stomp on their heart. It's not nice.
Don't on it too. And then I also think about, I mean, one time I received feedback directly on my phone. I don't know, this person got my number somehow, but like the feedback came right into my,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was long. And I was thinking, like, what, even if you did engage with the feedback, and even if you were like, oh, I could write this section different, what are you going to do? The book is
Yeah.
already out there in the way you
Yeah.
can call
Yeah,
your
do you know, sometimes I get critiqued and I'm like, fair play.
Yes.
I'm like, fair enough,
Yeah.
but there's nothing I can do about it now. Sometimes you even suspect it when you're writing, but writing is and you're in it's like the book is at some point when you're editing it, the book is like this and it's
It's
hard
like
to
this.
even,
Yes.
yeah, get
It's
that
in your skin.
distance. Yeah, so I'm like, you have the distance
Yes.
to note some things, and I'm like, fair play, and I'll try to be aware next time or not, depending, how it goes. But it's not that all critique is incorrect.
Yes.
But some of it is just very mean.
Yes. And I mean, when it comes to that, because some of it you discover yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like I know that the version that I have here probably there's things that are different
Yeah.
between this version and the
Yeah.
version that you published. And I find too that when you're reading your own work, even years later, you're reading your own work, you're like, oh, how did I let that?
Years
How did I
later,
let
I
that?
did a reading yesterday and I was like, damn it.
Yes.
I was like, this sentence sounds clunky to me. I don't
Yes, the
know. How did that happen?
sentences,
Yeah.
especially the sentences. But do you have favorite sentences? Do you have any places that you just say, I will read this section? Even in this book, I know this book is new, but do you have places where you're like, I did a good job there? And what are those
I
places?
have places that I read, but mostly because of the the thinking behind it.
Mm,
They're not, it's, I liked because I did do the prologue because it's right at the start, or I do the first time the curse comes up.
mm,
And I start from, because I don't like to, I get very tired of the sound of my voice. So I don't like to read that entire chapter. I start midway through,
mhm,
and I set it up and then I read that, because it's just a good lead in. Those two parts are a good lead in for someone who hasn't read the book.
mhm.
So that's why I choose those. I rarely like, but there's some scenes I do sort of, like, I think there's a scene between um two romantic characters
Mhm.
that I liked. I thought it was sweet, and yeah, I enjoyed
Wait,
that
which
scene.
two? Because there are a few. I mean, at least there's the
Oh,
one at the beginning between Monife, and then there's that
yes.
one.
No,
Yes.
this is like two characters sort of in bed. Nothing really happens in that scene. Two characters sort of in bed together, and I think one of them says how she wants to wear his skin or crawl inside
Yes,
his
I remember
skin.
that. Yes.
So I kind of liked that scene quite a bit. But mostly it's like on the odd chance that I go back and I reread something and I'm like, damn, girl, you did a good job here.
Yeah. I
Look at
mean,
you.
just between the two of us, first of all, I want to tell you, someone said, I don't remember if you saw this or if you looked at the questions in detail, but somebody said that their favorite line was love. Love was what had gotten Monife buried 6 feet under. And so I
Mm.
wanted to hear if you had any favorites. But just between the two of us, I mean, obviously not between the two of us because there are extra people here. But I found that I commit to like one section of the book, and I'm like, this is the section I'm going to be reading. And if the same people come to different readings, I don't know what to tell you. Because I don't want to encounter another section and then start having to like process whatever feelings I have about it.
Mm. Mm.
So because of that growth that you were talking about at the beginning, right? Like when you read a book that you wrote five
Mm.
years ago,
Mm.
there's so
Mm.
many things that you've learned,
Mm.
even just on a craft level, that you're like,
Mm.
oh, this
Mm.
should have actually been shaped
Mm.
this way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So because you spoke about how you sometimes we read from the section where the curse is introduced. Speaking of curses, so yes, obviously there's a curse that's like this, carried all the way through in this
Mm.
in this novel. And I was thinking curses could actually be related to like the haunting, right? Because in here, the curse is a literal curse that someone states,
Mm.
and everybody who comes after, holds the belief that this curse has power over them. Did you believe that the curse was true for these characters? Did you think the curse was what was at play?
I believed whatever my characters believed, and they believed different things.
Mhm.
So, I'll just set it up in case you haven't, for the listener who hasn't read it.
Mhm.
Um, so imagine a beautiful, dark-skinned, confident young woman living in an intimate village. And a man comes to this village and she decides she likes the man. So she sneaks into his room one night and they have a passionate night together.
Passionate.
And and she's gone in the morning. So for him, it's a sort of fever dream. So he's getting ready to leave the village, and this crowd comes to him. Speaking of sentences that are a little bit hinky. I read that recently and I was like, oh, there's something about that line where the crowd comes that's just not working for me. The transition between the sentence before and anyhow. So this crowd comes to him, and the chief is at the head of the crowd, and he accuses the man of eating something and tried to leave without paying. And the man says, when did I eat something and not pay? And the crowd parts like the Red Sea, and they reveal this woman he spent the passionate night with. So basically, he's forced to marry her,
Mhm.
which he does, and then he leaves the village, and comes every few months or so to see his wife. But he has a whole other wife,
Yep.
and she comes to the village because she thinks, she hears about this house he has in the village, and she imagines it's for her children, it's her children's inheritance. And what she discovers is that there's a wife in this village, and a child, and she's not happy about this. So she promptly curses the woman and every woman that will come from her line. And the curse is basically that no man will be able to call their house home, but they will labor for the love of man and find that, but fall short of other women, that men will be like water in their palms. And that's the curse. And as you said, it's a literal curse, and I treated it as such a lot of the time because I enjoy the supernatural and the hinky. Um, and some of my characters believe in the curse wholeheartedly. And
Wholeheartedly.
there's some characters who are skeptical of this curse. And when they were skeptical, I was also skeptical. And I thought this could be, this curse isn't a literal curse. It's a metaphor for generational trauma. And, they're passing on this law from daughter to daughter to daughter, making it very hard for these women to think outside of the curse. And um, sometimes for me, the curse would become like a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yes,
because they believed in it and they acted in certain ways, and these actions would lead them
the
to the
curse to
thing that
become
they
true.
feared. Yeah, and then and it would happen, and they'd be like, "Oh, I always knew it was going to happen because look, the curse." So I was believing different things at different points when I was writing it.
Hmm. And I also think, like, in relation to the curse, one thing that I was always aware of is how the curse was immediately targeted at the other women and all the women that would follow. And men didn't get cursed. And I was like,
Yeah, a friend of mine, when she hadn't read it yet, but she sort of read the blurb or the initial part, and she felt very she was triggered. She was like, that this seems excessive. Like, not just this woman, but every woman. And the
everyone.
guy, like,
I was like, that's
curse the guy
yeah,
literally.
I have a
Yeah,
line.
yeah.
I think the moment that clicks to me, I wrote it down. I was like, what about the man? Just any
Gets off
punishment.
scot-free. Yeah.
Ah, this
As they
is
do,
hardcore.
as they often do.
Exactly, exactly. Which, like, it was the right decision. It was the right literary decision. I mean, because it makes you think about how this would actually play out, right? Even like when located in time. But in addition to it being the curse being a metaphor, and the ways that a lot, especially towards the end, you could see the ways that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, because even for the characters that were skeptical about the curse, sometimes they would walk these steps where you want to pull them out and say, look, like, yes, there's the curse, but you're stepping right into it. But there was also like a sense of like multiple curses. Sometimes, like as subplot, right? Like, I maybe because I had the word cursed at the top, that I was identifying other curses that were traveling through the book. And
Mm,
so I could see illness, like being unwell, like the different
mm,
characters being unwell in different ways, right?
mm,
Being unwell mentally, or
mm,
concerns about sickle cell anemia, and other social ills also
mm,
addressed
yeah.
in the same context. Did you see that happening as you were writing it, or was it after, when you stepped away, that you could see all these different curses flowing through as a result of that big curse?
Um, I don't know if I was thinking about it in quite those terms,
Mhm.
but you know, as I said, the thing about this, curse, whether it's literal or metaphor, why it's easy to interpret it one way or the other is because at no point do the men sprout wings and fly away. A lot of the things that happen are real life
Mhm.
things. They
Mhm.
could happen without a curse. A lot of them, you don't need a curse. And there were some things that were like there was one scene. So I mean, in this book, there are little chapters that sort of document the history of this family of women.
Mhm.
And one of the scenes was about a woman who has an autoimmune illness. And um, at first, I mean, she wasn't upfront about the fact that she had an autoimmune, but also at the same time, she's like, but this man loves me. He loves me and he will love me despite and why. And this chapter came actually much later on in the process of this novel. Like I was basically kind of done. I shouldn't have been adding anything else. But I was having a conversation with my youngest sister, and I just thought, how did I not? Because I knew why I was adding certain types of stories into it, and certain reasons why relationships fall apart.
Mhm.
And definitely, I've heard women or people just talk about illness in relationships and how, it's much more common for a woman to stand by the man's side, than it is for the man. Like if the woman is ill or has this long-term illness, um, there are just, a few rare men who are able to be there through the storm and comfort her and be the carer in that instant. And it was very important that I add that.
Mhm.
So yeah, there were other things except that the women were going through but I think it's also like they came from this family that was carrying this weighty thing
Mhm.
and had been carrying it for generations. It would undoubtedly affect their mental health,
Mhm.
affect their, ability to make healthy choices for themselves sometimes.
Mhm. It's because no one is cursing the man.
Yes.
Someone needs to do some curse.
Yes, more, no offense to the men listening, but more
More
cursing
curses.
of the men.
And then it brings you together because you're scared.
Mm,
You're cautious around this curse. Okay. Yeah, that I really, I'm sitting in your response. So one question that someone wanted to, put forward to you was whether there's any similarity between the interviews that you hold from place to place. Obviously, you hold them in so many different places. You're in Germany right now. Do you feel like they're the same when you're talking about the same text? I suspect an answer to this, but I want to hear it from
no, they're
you.
not the same.
Yeah. This is the
They-
best
I
one. This is your favorite one.
They're not the same. This session has been cool. It feels like gisting with like an old friend. It's been
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, they're not the same. But especially with this text, again, I'm coming off of having done this before.
Mhm.
But also because I'd done this before, I knew this text will be interpreted very different ways,
Mm-hmm.
very different, like I in my mind
Mm-hmm.
to a European, to I think the average European, cursed daughters will read almost like fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
But to not that anybody has called it fantasy,
Yeah.
but just this is just in my head. I
Yeah.
think the average European will read it as fantasy, and but because you have curses, you have juju, there's a lot of stuff that will be quite unfamiliar. Whereas if you're an African or specifically a Nigerian,
Yeah.
or even like Caribbean, because they have, it won't be, these concepts won't be as fantastical. The,
Mm-hmm.
um, the idea of
Seems
generation
fantastical to me.
yeah, the idea of a generational curse
Yeah.
is a very common, that phrase is a common phrase
Mm-hmm.
in the African community. People talk about generational curses all the time. People in church, people give testimonies about how they broke the generational curse.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's gonna read. And so I'm really interested because I'll be in Nigeria in December, but I'm also really interested in how will what questions will I get from a Nigerian? How will the
Yeah, from
Nigerian
there.
community, what I can think about this book? And I think because my sister's serial killer was fun, but it was quirky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas this might feel quite real to some people and some of the things that these women are going through and the broken homes and the trauma. I think for some people it might feel quite real. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of looking forward to meeting people who have that sort of perspective.
Mm-hmm. Um, Stay away from your tags because I'm sure someone has tagged you, hashtag fantasy or something like that. Maybe you,
mm.
but stay away from them because you don't know.
I don't even, yeah, but I think, so far with I think UK and Germany and so on. So far, I think a lot of the questions have been, about the culture because this is it's drenched in culture. So I
Mhm.
think they've just been interested in, oh, is this common? Is this real? Is this that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very culturally specific. I mean, how do you typically handle those questions? I wasn't going to ask you a question about culture, but how do you handle those questions when, yes, you are writing about something that's very culturally specific, but are through and through writing fiction, right? Because, like you said at the beginning, no singular character is based on a single person. And, as writers, we know that you are creating characters out of people you've met in your entire life and pulling, cobbling different parts that you're observing from people. But like, how do you handle those questions? So I found like a lot of those questions can be very sweeping. They can be very like, oh, so, like, do curses mean XYZ in this place? So how have you been handling them so far?
Um, I think I think like you said, I choose specificity
Hmm.
and I give disclaimers. I have disclaimers up my wahoo. I'm disclaimer city over here because I with my sister circle, I used to be like, look, I've not even gone everywhere in Nigeria. I can't even speak to Nigeria, let alone Africa. I can speak to the part of Lagos that I know, and I'm willing to, and even Lagos. I'm like, look, I've had a privilege and like my Lagos isn't everybody's Lagos. So I will speak to what I know and I write about what I know. And somebody else will write about what they know, and read that. And somebody else will write about their tribe and what they know and read that. But I can tell you what my opinion is. I'm also quick to say I'm not a historian. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not any of these things. I'm just a girl who likes to write fiction in her room. But when I do speak to things, I'd like to be specific and, say, look, this is what I know. This is the little, it's a little window to what I know here. But I'm also ignorant of a lot of things.
As we all are, right?
Yeah, and I didn't like the history of Nigeria. I'm still learning it. My formative years were in the UK, so I know a lot more about UK history than I do about Nigerian history. Today I was asked about Yoruba. I was asked about whether Yoruba was my first language and what writing in English was like. And I was like, man, I barely speak Yoruba. English is the language I have. Yoruba, I would love to. I'm learning, I'm improving, but I'm not fluent in Yoruba by any stretch of imagination at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, even when I put Yoruba in my book, that's a labor of love for me. I'm working very hard to do that.
And
So.
I mean, even if you were fluent, the speaking versus the writing of it can be like a very different
Yeah,
experience.
because I mean, there we don't most Nigerians, most Yoruba people speak Yoruba can't are not that great at writing it because of the accents.
Yeah.
We're out of practice with writing it. So even my parents are fluent. My mother-in-law is fluent, but when I ask them, okay, where do the accents go? They're all like, then they're sounding it out. My husband's quite good at accents, so he'll be like, okay, do, because there's a do re mi
Mhm.
thing to the accent. So he's sounding it out. Okay, this accent should go like this. Nobody has it. Like, I'm sure there's some Yoruba people that can speak and write beautifully, but
Mhm.
definitely the writing is a dying art.
Yeah.
Writing with the accents is a dying art.
Yeah, I read a book recently that had quite a few Yoruba phrases and it was covered in accents, which and it's the same for me. And I've found that when I'm writing in Bemba especially, and also Tonga too, because in Bemba there's some people who spell like words that make the ch sound with a ch, and some that only
Mm,
spell it with a c. And so
mm,
it depends what book I'm reading at that time. And it's
mm.
almost like it feels almost like, when you write an essay and then they say like you can use American English or British English, but just stay consistent. And so
Yeah.
it's like I just, there's that. Okay, we just have a few minutes left. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, but I will close with asking you, because we spoke about specificity, and obviously you are writing from your one lens, the things that you have experienced. Are there, this was a question, a pre-solicited question, so are there any books that are as drenched in Nigerian cultures that you would recommend right now? Can it be like three or four?
I mean, I always like to recommend The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives because that's a fun one.
Mhm.
And it is quite rich in culture. Um, I think Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo is a good read if you're looking for, yeah, culture. Welcome to Lagos,
Mhm.
by Chibundu Onuzo. If you're looking for culture, I think you'll find it there too. I mean, there's so many. I don't even
Yeah.
um what was it? Was it Light Seekers by gosh, Femi Kayode, I think. Which is like a crime. It's about what's that got no you know when a crowd of people kill someone, what's that thing?
Of justice?
No, there's another term for it when it's like a frenzy.
Mm,
Oh, anyway, but it's about that, and it
I
was
will add that one. Uh,
yeah, it was
because that's the
really
only one I have.
chilling. Yeah, it's really chilling, sort of, yeah,
Okay.
book.
Yeah, that's the only one I haven't read. And when I was talking about the accents, I was talking about Ayobami's latest book.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not remembering Stay With Me as vividly in terms of what the words look like on the
Mm.
page, but with her latest book, I remember that. Okay, so this is great time that we made,
Yeah.
but that's all the time we have this evening. Thank you again, Oyinka, for
Thank you, Rebecca. It was a fun
participating.
conversation.
It was so much fun. Everybody, this has been a virtual presentation of Club Book, a long-running literary series of Melsa made possible by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Special thanks to Carver County Library for the part they played in bringing Oyinka to us. Before you log off, look for the Club Book survey link, which is in the comments and will be projected in place of my video momentarily. Tonight is the last club book of the fall, and in fact, their final event of the year. However, this program will be back in March with a new lineup of 8 award-winning and best-selling authors, hosted in partnership with Twin Cities Libraries. In the meantime, be sure to check out their backlist of nearly 200 podcast episodes available at clubbook.org or through your favorite podcasting app. Thank you again.